So far in the series, you've seen us struggle to install an intake manifold and an aftermarket clutch. But in this episode, we're actually going to put in what you probably came here for in the first place, and install the turbo. So, let's get to it. Welcome back to my car closet. Not really much of a garage. It fits a car and really not much else on the sides of it, but we're back and we're installing a turbo today. So first I'm going to take out the intake and then spray the hell out of the exhaust manifold with this stuff. Yeah.
So out comes the intake, and since I already have a hot air intake installed, there's no need to remove the factory air box. Score! Then out comes the splash shield to access and remove the charge pipe and diverter valve plug. Back on top, I start removing those pesky nuts holding the downpipe on, which, in my case, actually removes the studs as well. Normally this might be a problem leading to future exhaust leaks, but the new turbo came with new studs, so sayonara problematic hardware. With the downpipe disconnected, I can start removing the coolant and oil lines to and from the turbo. If you've ever wanted a slow coolant shower all over your arms and face, here's your chance. Back to the top again. It seems the PB blaster I used on the manifold bolts did its magic and made for easy removal without any snap studs. It was actually almost too easy, which makes me think that maybe it wasn't tightened down completely to begin with? Either way, with lots of back and forth finagling, arm scratching, and swearing, the Kraken finally releases its grip.
It's out. Well, success so far. Got the turbo out. It's a little more oily and coolant bath-like than I had expected, but it's out and it took forever. But it's really exciting to see how much smaller everything is on this compared to the Boss kit, even the exhaust runners. This is the pretty one. And man, it's just gonna look nice in there. First off, I gotta get oil and coolant lines sorted on this, make sure I have them running right, and then throw this back in the car, and hopefully no issues, but you never know, probably issues. Look at it, it's so pretty.
Now to catch you up, if you haven't seen the last two episodes yet, this is the Boss 500 kit from CTS Turbo, which is a Garrett GTX 2867R adapted to bolt right up to the engine in the factory location. So really, it's the most convenient big turbo upgrade for this car, aside from a KO4, which is a bit smaller.
I'll bring that up. Looks like mine has just a tiny bit of play in the wastegate actuator right there. It's a very common thing on these turbos. They definitely have a shelf life. So, let's say me putting a big turbo on the car is maintenance.
With both turbos next to each other, it's time to transfer everything over to the new one. Thankfully, with this kit, CTS doesn't just send over the turbo and expect you to just force things to fit. With all the oil and coolant lines, gaskets, and new hardware, the R&D process really shows through. After getting the oil feed line secured on the block, first I transfer over my Go Fast Bits diverter valve, then the boost solenoid, which requires a little bit of opening up of holes to fit. The oil drain fitting also requires a little bit of drilling and slight bending to clear the larger compressor housing, but it's nothing you couldn't do on your own with the drill and hammer. But with that, the turbo is set up and ready to visit its new home.
Alright, we're back another day on the job. Yesterday I got the turbo out. I got basically everything transferred out from the old turbo to the new one. And then I was able to fit the new turbo into the engine bay without any trouble. So it's in there now, and now it's just time to hook everything back up and cross your fingers that it starts. So today, buttoning things up is the name of the game.
Installing a turbo on this car is definitely a bit of a puzzle. I found there's a certain series of steps needed, and if not followed correctly, some need to be repeated. So pay attention on how you remove the turbo so you waste less time getting the new one on.
Alright, so day 4,000, something like that. Thought I was going to finish up last night, but if I were to have finished up last night, I would have started the car at like 1 in the morning, so I think out of respect for my neighbors, I didn't do that. Also, nobody really tells you how long this takes when you're filming it yourself. It takes unbelievably long. So shout out to all of the car channels out there that do this on a regular basis. And I'm just trying to do things right. I want to make sure I do this correctly the first time so I don't screw anything up and just like destroy a $3,000 turbo. But so I got all the coolant lines, oil lines hooked up yesterday, and now it's just a matter of hooking up intake piping, intercooler piping. The charge pipe coming off of the turbo, I might have to switch back to a stock charge pipe, which is just painful to me because I have hard aluminum piping on it, but the outlet for the turbo is smaller than the piping I have, and I don't have a coupler for that. It doesn't seem like it kind of matches up how you'd hope it to. The turbo outlet is this diameter, whatever that is, 2-inch or whatever, and then the intercooler is that size. And on the stock turbo, I had a turbo muffler delete, which it sized it up to be able to fit the hard charge piping. But now with the new turbo outlet, it's back to stock size because it is meant to fit on a stock car with no modifications. So it's good and bad. I might see if I can just lop this off here and use that as a coupler because it does reduce down like right away. But I don't know. I might just have to use a stock pipe, which pains me, but I'll get it to work.
You can see here the size and shape difference between the two pipes. With the right silicone reducer, this might have worked, but I've got an idea that involves very safe cutting practices.
Alright, I think I have something figured out that's better than using the stock charge pipe. Here's something that can kind of explain my issue. So the outlet of the turbo is this size, and then what I had is there, so you can see the size difference. So this is what used to be a turbo muffler, and then this was the delete pipe. So the turbo muffler fit into the old turbo like that, and muffled noises. So I lopped that off, and then the muffler delete, this one, I lopped off the end of that. I think if I sandwich these together, like so, with a ton of silicone in between them, then I think that might work for now as an adapter from what, a 2-inch to 3-inch or whatever size that is. And then I can still use my hard charge piping, hopefully, if this allows with enough space. But I'm gonna test this out, see if it works. If I get any boost leaks, this is the first place I'm gonna check. But for now, we'll see if this works.
With this custom adapter, I can finally fit the aluminum charge pipe, but only after a little bit of cutting and DIY bead rolling. But hooray! No need to use stock components and disrespect the car gods.
Alright, so it's in there, and it ain't pretty, but I think it'll work for now. I'm gonna go on the record saying that that charge pipe is temporary because there's like 1,000 hose clamps on it. So there's the outlet, here's the turbo muffler sandwich that I made, and then another coupler, and an elbow that I had to kind of pound in the side for it to fit here, and I put this rubber hose here just to keep it from rubbing metal on metal and maybe wearing a hole in there, so it just kind of dented that in a little. And we got another coupler here, which is connecting the two pieces of the charge pipe that I cut in half and shortened, and then the charge pipe goes into the intercooler over there. So it ain't pretty, but let's hope it works. If I get any boost leaks, this whole garbage setup here is where I'm going to look first. But I think tonight I'm going to order some sort of either adapter or a whole new charge pipe. Maybe there's a silicone one that'll work here, because I just couldn't get that stock one to fit onto here. This is just too big, even though this is supposedly supposed to work with stock charge piping. So I don't know. That's what it is. And the last thing I have to do is hook up the intake pipe. So this here, get that onto the turbo. There's a little heat shield that I got to put in there, and then hook up some vacuum lines, and should be ready to turn over. So we are almost there. Almost.
The intake install actually took a little bit of trial and error to get it to where I wanted, but with how it sits now, it seems pretty sleek and rather hidden. It's one of those setups where when you see it, it looks stock, but if you know, you know. After replenishing the coolant, the engine is ready to do some cranking.
Alright, everything is, I think, hooked up. Intake is on, all vacuum lines and such are on. I disconnected the coil packs and the low pressure fuel pump just to crank it over, get the oil flowing without turning the engine on. Boy, have I ever been. Start her up. There's a little bit of smoke, as you would expect with any new like exhaust product. It's just burning off the stuff that kept it, preserved it on the shelf. So I'm gonna let it run for a little while. Sounds like a spaceship, which is sick. All right, I'll bring you around. Okay, so as I said, I don't see any leaks, but there's that smoke I was talking about. That'll eventually stop. It's idling pretty normal, which is a good sign, but I guess it's probably flowing the same amount of air at idle, so that would make sense. Nothing's leaking aside from what leaked before. Hard to tell from down here, but take my word for it. There is some coolant still from when I had several coolant showers when I disconnected everything. But yeah, I am going to clean up a little, then let's see if we can go for a drive. I will admit, I did take it for a drive before this. I just wanted to make sure nothing would break and I wouldn't be stranded on the road with a camera and everything else. So I need to go pick up coolant, but first impressions, I'm gonna open all the windows. It sounds so much better. It sounds like a spaceship or something. Which is way better than the stock tea kettle noise you get with an intake and a KO3 on this car. But it sounds so good. There's like every part of my being is fighting just flooring it and feeling how fast it is, but without a tune. But exhaust note sounds a little different too. Man, turbo sounds so good. It just totally transforms the car, and like I'm not even feeling the performance difference. It's just the sound of it is so much better. But it's driving surprisingly well. I expected it would have like misfire or break up a little bit, even just normal driving, but it's been pretty good. Oh, it sounds so good. Oh man, I can't wait to get this thing tuned. It sounds so good. Well, yeah, I think that'll wrap it up. 4 days of work, should have been like 4 hours, but I wanted to take my time and do it right. I'll keep you updated if anything breaks or whatever in the meantime. But until then, tune in next week for the tuning and the final summary of this series. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. So, I'm really excited. I'm so happy that this has worked out so far. There's more to come. Next week won't be the end of this car, but it'll be the end of this small series. So, yeah, I'll see you next time.